Paul, hi.
Hi. Paul,
Yeah,
with you.
yeah. Thanks for joining us. You are on hour 5 of our 24-hour talkathon, and I've been really enjoying it. I think the quality of the conversation has been phenomenal, and some of the stuff that we're hearing has been great. Paul, do you want to introduce?
Yeah, so Paul Benger, some of you watching will know, is the senior leader of Icon Church down in Chesterfield and other campuses, but also runs the ground level network all across the country, which I won't do justice if I explain it, but I'm sure Paul will be able to tell us more. But that's actually where we met, through through my brother-in-law, Ollie, pastor of Rock Church. Took me along to a ground level event, which I just absolutely loved it. It was just great to connect with people. We talked today, haven't we, a lot about authenticity. This guy is authenticity, and very welcoming and warm. And as we were a part of that and got involved in that network, we just realised that flows down amongst all of the people, and just being able to connect with people is a real gift that Paul has, and I'm sure we'll be able to ask some questions and find out about that. But Paul, I'm going to hand straight over to you and ask you to tell us a little bit about ourselves.
Yeah,
ourselves.
Ourselves, yeah. I'd struggle saying too much about.
We're only 5 hours in.
Yeah. So I'm married to Jeannie. We got married 39 years ago. So so get into the 40th. We and then 37 years ago we planted a church called Icon. Well, now called Icon. It had 2 previous names, but now called Icon. And we got 3 campuses. We did have 5 at one point, but COVID and the way things go, we've trimmed back a little bit to 3 campuses, but that church is doing great, etc. All that time, 37 years, because I was 23, my wife was 22 when we planted the church. And we knew that we didn't have a clue what we were doing. And so we asked a few people for help. And one of the people we asked was Stuart Bell, who from Lincoln, and many of maybe your listeners will have heard of Ground Level and the One Event and Grapevine, as was in the early days. So we asked Stuart, and Stuart's reply was, my words to him was, I'm 23, my wife's 22. We feel called to plant a church. We have no idea what we're doing. And he said, well, I'm not sure we know what we're doing, but why don't we do it together and learn together? And I was sold. And so I've been part of the Ground Level Network all that time, 37 years. And 2 years ago, I took on the leadership from Stuart. Stuart transitioned the leadership of the network to me. We've got 80 churches in our network, 3 overseas, 77 in this country, and we've got more churches looking to join us in the present, actually. So we're in a really good season. Just had our leaders conference, and that's been fantastic. Family wise, we've got 3 boys and 6 grandchildren, all boys. So I don't think we're able to do girls in our family, but there you go. So and loving the grandchildren phase. I joke, as many people do, if I'd have known how good grandchildren were, I'd have skipped my own children and gone straight. I'd just bypassed that. So, but I guess your own children are the pain you go through to get grandchildren. So it's not quite that bad. Sorry, I'm kind of speaking slightly out of turn there, but you know,
is our chat now just going to blow up with your kids?
Yeah. Yeah, they've heard me say it many times. It's the kind of it's the preacher line that, you know what, I can guarantee a laugh every time with it. So yeah, great. But it's great to be with you guys. Love Mercy, love what you're doing. Maybe I could just say that we were introduced to the Freedom Course a couple of years ago. Talked to Paul a little bit as well about it, but got introduced through Georgina Smith at King's Church in Bolton to the Freedom Course. I know you guys have worked with them, And we'd been looking for many years for something that we felt fit our church and fit our church culture to help people. And so we've been running that for a couple of years. We took all our staff through it at the end of last year, beginning of this year. And so we're big advocates for the Freedom Course. I've even been, as I've been traveling recently in South Africa, just talking to the guys there about it and just, raving. As I say, I'm a big advocate for it. Feel like it does a great job, and we've seen some good things as a result of running it over the last year. Definitely.
That's great feedback today. Thank you.
Yeah.
So you took your staff through Keys to Freedom. Then what was?
Yes.
How do I phrase it? Taking a group of people through it can see big impact relatively quickly. So from a church point of view, now, I mean, I've done Keys to Freedom. I've delivered it. I've run groups. I've delivered the majority of the training that Mercy have done had my fingerprints on it somewhere. So taking a big group through it can bring huge changes. What were the changes that you saw across your staff team, and how immediate were those changes?
I think so. Obviously, we've run it in the church as well. I think we've run 3 courses in the church with people in the church, and I think. Certainly within the context of the church, more acute issues came up with the church people rather than the staff people. But I think from the staff perspective, taking the staff through it, what it did allow was us to talk together as a group about some of the issues, and even for several people just to open up around certain things, in their own lives, in the way that the things that they'd faced or been facing at times. And that created, Paul spoke about authenticity, and it is a massive authenticity, and relationship is a big value for us, both in our church and in our network. And I want to say, just in that group setting, it just created that normalizing of, we have struggles, we have challenges, there's things that we need to get free from, there's things we need to understand. So I think that was a big win for me. The fact that I think gave us a bit more cohesiveness, even within a group that was very cohesive to start with and very united. So it actually joined us together. I think it helped some people to change perspective on an individual basis, and to reframe some of the things that they faced and were going through. I think reframing is a very important thing when it comes to, spiritual growth or even mental health. I think the whole idea of being able to reframe things and see things in a different light. And so I think that helped people, and I saw that in 1 or 2 individuals. So I would say they would be the big takeaways, really, for us as a staff, and just giving us an environment where a lot of the time, as church staff teams, you're just talking about how was Sunday, what's coming up next Sunday, because it comes quick. We've got these big events, we've got all this doing. You're talking about the work, the ministry that you're doing. Sometimes as staff teams, you don't get time to talk to each other. And that gave us a good environment to do that. And so my wife, who's kind of led the team across the church, she took all the staff through it. So I went through it as just with all the other staff as well. So yeah, really good experience.
Amazing. I think that leads nicely into a question that we had a minute ago, which was about it was a question from actually one of Mercy's senior leads. It said, what can be done for those men who don't have brotherhood or community to draw on? So you obviously have those people came together. There was a space for them to maybe talk. In your experience of running churches and being at the grassroots end of community work, really, I suppose, what are the things that you've seen that if people don't have that brotherhood or that sort of community or connection, how can they get that?
Well, I think, is the question, how can they get brotherhood, or what can be done for them in terms of their own mental health. Is that what the question is? Yeah. Well, I think there's work that can be done on a personal level. That would be the first. That would be the first thing. I mean, my encouragement. I'll come back to that in a second. My encouragement would be for anybody to seek it out, and to seek out a community. You know, I genuinely believe, like, I have this teaching that talks about the 4 encounters we all need. The first encounter is the gospel, the grace of God, the love of God, the fact that we can be accepted. The second encounter is truth. We've all believed lies across our lives, and we need an encounter with the truth. We need to know the truth that sets us free. The third encounter is the Holy Spirit, and the fourth is community. And I believe that they're as powerful as each other, and that we need all 4 of them. And so I would first of all say, can we help somebody find a community where they would be accepted, where they would be involved? If that's not a possibility, then I think there's the personal work that a person can do. And one of the things I was sharing with Paul is, I like the term mental fitness. I don't know if I can jump into that just for a second. I like the term mental fitness other than mental health. And part of the reason for that is because of my own journey. Like, when I think about mental health, it's like it's fixed. You know, this is my mental health. But if I go to the doctor and the doctor says to me, Paul, you need to lose some weight. You're not very fit. There's something we can do about that. There's something that can be done about it. That's why I like the term mental fitness, that we are not stuck in, it's not the end of the story. If we're going through a period of whatever it is in relation to mental health. And I found this myself. And I found this, I want to say it was about the year 2000. I found myself in a very negative place. Well, my whole demeanor really was negative. I went through different periods of different things over the years, and I realized that I couldn't live a positive life with a negative mind. So there was something that I had to do to become fitter mentally. And for me, that was all related to my faith. That was all related. I was a leader at the time. I was pastoring a church. I was preaching the gospel. I was preaching good news, but I was still in this place where, people say it was the glass half full, is the glass half empty. And I used to say, life's never that good. and now people say to me, Paul, we can't believe that you're one of the most positive people, or the most upbeat people we meet. I say, well, just ask my wife. She'll tell you that was the truth. But I had to do something about fitness, and I got to a place where I realized I can't be the person that I feel I need to be or called to be. I can't be the husband. Let's put it in that context. I can't be the father. I can't be the pastor. I need to do the work I need to do with that. And so I began, every time I was in that space of real negativity and defeat, which was a lost time, I began to say to myself, that's not me. That's not who I am. And I would replace that with the truth of who God had called me to be, or who I felt God wanted me to be. And I relate that to the verse in Corinthians where Paul says, you're tearing down strongholds, you're taking every thought captive, making it obedient to Christ. And so I would say, for anybody who is going through something, on a personal level, and that's just, scraping the surface, I guess, of my story a little bit, there's things that you can do and that you can do personally. Seek out community if you can, but find things, find techniques, find things that help you change your mental fitness, become fitter. The Apostle Paul says it, doesn't he, in Romans 12, we can be renewed, we can be transformed by the renewing of the mind. And I'm sure many of the people who've been on today will have mentioned the fact that neuroscience has taught us that our brain is not fixed. Even when we get older, which is good news for me, just having had a big birthday, but even as we get older, our brains can still be renewed and rewired. And, you know, that would be the first thing. There's things that we can do, finding different things. Community is important, though, and friendship, too, is really important. You know, Simon Sinek came across some research, and he talks about how many 2 a.m. friends have you got? So how many people have you got in your world that you could ring up 2 a.m. and say, well, you know, chaos is happening, you know, this is happening. And he says that there's research that says 10 years ago, the average number would have been 2. That 10 years ago, people would have been said, I've got 2 people I could ring at 2 a.m. The average number now, 2024, is 0. That when you add that up across all the people surveyed, it comes out at 0 point whatever, it's 0. And I think that's a big challenge. And I think it's a big challenge for the church that actually, you know, one of the things in our network I've been saying to pastors is, on your worst day, ring me. Don't sit alone. Don't face it alone. On your worst day, ring me. When you're going through a crisis, ring me. You know, just pick up the phone, and if there's nobody else that you feel that you can call, ring me.
Paul, can I ask you a quick question on that? So when you were talking about your personal journey, I know you're just kind of skimming over it, but I'm interested in there would have been a moment where you'd been struggling and you'd been realizing that actually you were in a bad place, and then you kind of said, and then I realized I need to do something about it. Could you zoom in? Could you hover a magnifying glass over that moment? And what helped you? Because it seemed, I don't know if it relates to what you've just been sharing there about having somebody that you can pick up the phone to at 2 a.m. in the morning, or who was it that was around you at the time? What was it that happened? Was there a specific moment where you said, oh, I realized that something needs to shift here? Could you zoom in on that moment? Because my guess is that for a lot of men, they hover on the wrong side of that line for too long. They're either afraid of it, they don't realize, we've talked about it before on this or today, that they accept mediocrity, they accept the fact that they are just in a bad place. But help us understand what shifted for you.
Yeah, well, I guess one of the triggers, I mean, I think there were many things that triggered me thinking I need to do something about this, but one of them was actually being around people who had better mental health. And for me, being around mental fitness, seeing people who didn't seem to struggle the way I did, who didn't seem to be, you know, always negative or always worrying or always believing the worst was going to happen rather than something good was going to happen. People who I felt had not necessarily more faith in terms of their belief in God and their spiritual faith, but more faith in terms of living out life. And that was a key for me. So I began without having really any of those people I could talk to directly. I actually began to look at their lives, and some of them were pastors as well. So I would listen to their teaching. I would listen to their messages, and I was looking to find, where do they think differently to me, so that I could actually think, well, that's where I need to change. So really trying to find for me what fit my situation, because many of our situations, whilst we face similar things, actually present very differently for individuals. And so it's finding the things that you think, that's a different perspective. Yeah. I don't have that perspective. I don't look at what mistakes. I don't look at failure. I don't look at fears. I don't look at challenges in the same way that that person is looking at challenges. And for me, trying to go on that journey to reposition myself, and it was, you know, it was months, I would say it was months and months of daily pulling down thoughts, and actually declare that the most powerful thing I did in that period was actually saying to myself, and sometimes even saying out loud, that's not me. That's not who I am. I'm a person of faith. That's not who I am. And there has been some recent research, again, I've not got the citing with me, but there's been recent research that I've read where one of the most powerful things that we can do is not create a vision board of what we'd like to be, or some, you know, some, that's a picture, but actually declaring and saying, this is not who I am. Actually deciding this is not the person I am, and I'm going to be. And that's been proven recently, you know, the proof of that. I'm sure the research has gone on for many years, but it's been written about quite recently. And so I think, yeah, just zooming in on that, it was very much what I saw around me, that actually I want to be more like that. I want to respond and frame things more in those ways. Specifically, a lot of it was to do with ministry and how I looked at ministry, how I looked at my work, the value I put on myself. You know, so you know, I would say that I grew up with a very poor self-image. In my life, I had lots of, you know, positive idea and a sense of calling as to what I was going to do, but I still carried that poor self-image. That didn't take that poor self-image away, so I had to reframe all of that.
Where do you think that came from, Paul?
I think my family background was challenging. In one sense, I mean, my mum did an incredible job, but my mum got pregnant with me at 20 years of age, and my father didn't want anything to know about with my mum or me. So I grew up, and my mum never remarried. I grew up in that situation. I grew up in a home with my mum's obviously her family, with her siblings and my grandmother, who were all amazing. My grandmother was a Christian. My mum became Christian when I was 3, and that was kind of a, you know, that was a great foundation for faith. But the home was had a lot of conflict in it, and you know, there was a fair bit of chaos. So some of that, I guess, transferred itself into me. I never felt, probably, and I've never really, in some ways, I've never clearly articulated this, but I never felt growing up that you know, I was in a perfect home, or, you know, or anything. And, you know, and you go through life, you just get on with it, don't you? You do what you do. But I feel probably some of that had an effect on my own image of myself, and how I approach. Never felt good enough. You know, whatever I achieved, never felt it was anything of worth, etc., etc. And then I just carried that into my adult life, and even having a sense of calling, having come to Christ, having a sense of calling, planting a church, starting a church, leading a church. I've been leading the church 12 years by the time I went through this transformation, particularly in my own mental fitness. So that came with me. But yeah, so that's a little bit more, I guess, of my story. You know, some of the things that I had to overcome in terms of that.
Do you mind me asking if you ever had a relationship with your dad? So when you said he left home before you were even born.
I had 2 conversations with him, only because I ended up training. I was we lived in a mining village, and I got, when I left school, I got a management trainee position, which meant I had to work in all the departments at the local colliery. And he happened to work there, and I ended up having 2 conversations. I can't really say they were even with him, but there were 2 conversations about me that he had with me present, when we just came across each other. The first one, he didn't even know who I was. His friend had to say, that's your son, you know, and I overheard all this. And then he said some very derogatory remarks about me. You know, which I never responded to. And then there was another incident, you know, just shortly after that. So I occasionally would see him about in the town and in the place where we lived. And later on, he got a different job, actually working for somebody I knew at the time. So I'd see him physically, but never had any interaction with him beyond that.
I appreciate this is getting probably more personal than you had intended, but it's an important question to ask, I think, because our relationship with fathers is a really significant one for guys that are that grow up and that struggle.
Yeah.
So if you don't mind me asking one more follow-up question, by all means you don't have to answer it, but how much do you think his absence and those experiences you just described, which sound incredibly painful, how much do you think that impacted your idea of what it meant to be a man, of what masculinity looked like, felt like?
Yeah, I don't think the experiences felt painful at the time.
Yeah.
So, you know, I was a kid. I enjoyed being a kid. I got on with stuff. But the places where you're being wounded aren't external. They're internal.
Yeah.
And so they do leave their mark. I think I had to learn, because obviously, and being a preacher now and a pastor, I help other people in similar situations. And one of the things I encourage people is, you know, when Jesus said, pray like this, he starts off, our Father. And if I ever teach on that, I say this can be a challenging thing for some people, because relationship with your father might have been chaotic. It might have been abusive. It might have been, you know, it might have been brilliant. But there's a whole range of relationships. But if there is a wound, it can be healed. And I say that from my own story of understanding, obviously, who God was and who he is as a father. But the other brilliant thing, and this is why community is an encounter. I had incredible male role models in church, not in my family, but in church. I had my pastor. I became a Christian at 13, and my pastor, he was a young man with a young family of his own, 4 children. He would include me in his family stuff, and you know, he would even took me on holiday twice with his family, you know, as a teenager. Like, so I'd be, I don't know, 15, 16, 17, sort of that age, when I went on holiday with family. There was another family in our church. They used to take me to their house for Sunday lunch. And it wasn't that they had children, 3 children, but they were all younger than me. But again, a couple of male role models that actually just were healthy men, good men, and leading good families, seeking to lead good families. And I felt that helped me. That was, you know, part of my journey. That's why community can be an encounter.
Yeah.
Because it can put you in a place, even if it's just an example. You know, I think of, I met with somebody just last week, Jeannie and I met with somebody, and they were talking about their 15-year-old daughter, and they were talking about some of the young couples and families in our church. And they were saying, that's what I want for my daughter.
Yeah.
And that encounter can be so powerful. You know, we all know, and it's in the news all the time at the moment, isn't it? That the church isn't always incredible and an incredible experience for people. The sad thing is the other stories don't get told.
Mm.
The story like I'm telling today, how many millions of people whose lives have been saved by that community. That it far outweighs all the stuff we see in the media. Far outweighs it. Yeah.
Well, you've obviously been if my maths are correct, you've obviously been a pastor for 30 something years. Is that about right?
We planted the church 37 years ago, but I had 2 years before that pastoring.
Wow.
Yeah, in a couple of different contexts. So almost 40 years.
Okay, so nearly 4 decades of pastoring, of people helping, of working in church, working in the community. What has been the change in the mental health across that time? Obviously that's the answer is going to be quite a lot, I imagine. But what has been the change? What did you see then? What did you see in the middle? What are you seeing now? Or are there actually not really any differences?
I think I think there's a lot of. It's a great question because I think it presents much more now. In the early days of pastoring, you probably wouldn't know that people were struggling as much as you do today with mental health. I mean, let me say it was definitely there, but people didn't talk about it, and still today people don't talk about it, particularly men. Find it very difficult, but it presents a lot more, and I think because of that we're all more acutely aware of it because we all know somebody.
Yeah.
I mean, if I tell you that yesterday a lady in our church, whose husband wasn't a Christian, he took his life yesterday. And you know, we were obviously dealing with that yesterday, and other people still involved in that. But we all know somebody now. You know, it presents. The other big shift is the younger generation are far more anxious than they have ever been. They present far more anxious. I feel like I was an anxious 16-year-old. You know, I was a insecure, you know, sort of 16-year-old kid. I wasn't necessarily. I was still quite gregarious, and in many ways people would have thought outgoing, but internally was quite anxious. But I feel like there's a lot more anxiety, and I'm not sure that society are giving people tools. I think they're good at diagnosing. They're giving diagnosis, but actually tools to get free. Like, I'm not sure there are. I don't want to dismiss the good work that so many people do in this area, but I feel as society in general, culture as general, doesn't give the answers that people need. And you know, I come back. This gives me great confidence in the gospel. It gives me great confidence in the church. The truth will set people free.
Yeah, I saw a little advert recently. Forgive me, I forget what it was for, but it was about mental health, and it was about working with your own stresses and mental health. And basically, the idea was have a hot bath, go for a walk. Not against those ideas, but that's really what's that 1 out of 100, 1 out of 100 level of stress and pressure and mental health. Like, no amount of hot water and bubbles in the world is going to fix it. It might make you feel better at the end of a difficult day, but it's not actually fixing that type of thing. So we're getting quite a lot of comments and things through on the chat, and lots of people are really, really, to be fair, you probably can't read these, so I'll share it with you. But lots of people are really impressed with the work that you're doing, and how honest and open that you are with sharing your thoughts around mental health around the community. So yeah, I'm going to share that because you probably can't read that on your screen. So
yeah, I can't see it now. But no, that's great. No, it's good, and I think we want to help people, don't we? I like I say, I love the term mental.
Yeah.
But I think everybody can get fitter mentally. And for some, that's a bigger journey than others. But even today, sat here, and someone who doesn't struggle anywhere near at all in the same way as I explained briefly previously, I can get fitter mentally. I can still be renewed. My mind can still be renewed. My thoughts can still be renewed. I can still find things to help me on that journey, and so some of those things I would just, one thing I would say, and I think this is very good, is that rhythms are super powerful in life. In fact, we have a saying, and I think I coined it in our church. It's this: rhythms are more powerful than encounter, but an encounter has the power to change your rhythm.
That's good.
That's good. Yeah.
But it's the rhythm, and like for me, just every morning, first thing, usually it's fairly early, 6 o'clock this morning, because Jeannie and I went to the gym about 6:30, 6:45. The first thing is I read some scripture, not a lot, but I just read some scripture, and all I do is say, Lord, I'm here, do whatever you want. And but most days that doesn't feel too special, but I think that rhythm has a power that we often don't understand. And having rhythms of corporate worship, being together, with other people, because I feel one of the things that society does do, or culture does do, it can remove people from helpful spaces because they're struggling. And actually remove them from the things that will potentially produce answers in their lives. And so I'm a big believer, whatever you want to call them, rhythms, spiritual practices, natural practices, whatever, whatever kind of helps in that area, but having rhythms.
That's great. I had a conversation recently with someone, and what we were talking about, and I think it's so true, is that often when we think about what we need to have mental fitness or to be mentally healthy, we have those conversations in ourselves at the point in which we're not. And actually what the rhythms does, and if we take your analogy of exercise and fitness a bit further, is that if you've got to do a marathon, if you've got to do a trek, if you've got to walk up a mountain, there's no good starting the practices when you're at the bottom of the hill. You've got to prepare beforehand. And the reality is, for all of us, there is a mountain to climb around the corner. So even if we feel great now, there is a mountain to climb around the corner. There will be. Parents will get sick. Children will get sick. There'll be challenges in our church environment, challenges at work. We will have mountains to climb. And actually, the good practices and the rhythms, we have to establish those when we're in a better place. But often when we're in a better place, we don't even think to do it because we're fine. Could you speak into that a little bit more? Because I feel like that probably encapsulates a lot of the mental fitness stuff.
Definitely. Let the rhythms become habits. And I'd also say as well, I think a big thing in establishing rhythms is people stop because they fail. So they'll say, I'm going to set a rhythm, even if they're in a good place, I'm going to set a rhythm of whatever it is. Getting up early, going for a walk, getting some fresh air, I mean, you alluded to some of the things like bubbles in the bath, or, even I'm going to feel the grass on my bare feet. I've read all those things too. I might have even written a few of them. I don't know. But, they're going to say, and then they fail and they stop. But actually, the most important thing is just keeping that rhythm and just resetting. I read a book a few years ago which really helped me in this area, and it was about climbing Mount Everest. And it was saying, when you climb Mount Everest, you go to a certain altitude, base camp, and then the following day you walk up and then you come back down because you need time to get used to the altitude. and then you go back up, and then you're able to put your, you know, your camp there. And then it's this pattern that happens all the time. And I think that is so true on many journeys, but certainly a mental health and a mental fitness journey. There'll be times you feel like I'm just back where I was, but you don't realize the fact that you've put in practices into place is helping you breathe a different air at a different altitude. You are actually moving forward. And so I just want to, I would encourage anyone to get some, whatever rhythms. I mean, I'm an only child, you know, from, as you can tell from my story, I love solitude. I love family. I love everything. I love solitude. You know, there's a difference between solitude and isolation, I think, you know, where solitude is, you know, where you're just in that place, in that space, you know, for purpose. Isolation is when you're withdrawing from other people. So there's a big difference. So I just love, so like every 3 months, again, forgive me because I can only speak out of my context as a pastor and leader, but every 3 months I have a day in my diary, and I put it in my diary, and it's called Jesus Day, and that's my solitude day. And it's like I get my notebooks from the last 3 months, and I just go through every note I've made over 3 months. I just sat there, you know, with a coffee machine. It sounds idyllic, doesn't it? It sounds idyllic to me anyway. I've got a chair and notebooks, and I just spend as much time in the day that I can just in that, and that I find so refreshing and renewing. But we're all different, so that's a great rhythm for me. Other people will find other rhythms that, you know, are helpful for them. So find community, find your rhythms, I think will be my big statements.
Well, the chat is blowing up with that quote that you brought on board. Then rhythms are more powerful than an encounter, but an encounter has the power to change your rhythm. Everyone's loving this coming through on the chat. So I even saw Paul reach for his notebook. He got the pen out. He went old school Christian with paper and pen. To be fair, I'm exactly the same. I've got paper and pen right here.
I'm surprised he's not heard me say that before.
not that one. But you did just mention something that I was going to ask you about. But there are two themes that I think are emerging throughout this time already. One of them is the pace of life. That is definitely emerging as a theme. Everything is just million miles an hour. The other one that seems to be coming through that you're talking about is being intentional. It's being purposeful. And I remember you and I had a conversation maybe a year ago or so, and we were chatting about this kind of stuff, and you were saying that, you know, you lead a really busy church, you lead a busy network, you've got all the pastoral role that you fulfill. You're a busy guy, but you purposefully take time off, don't you, on a sort of regular basis. You have it actually planned in, don't you, in advance?
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Can I just say something about pace then? Because I don't think pace is our problem. I think peace is.
Peace, that's good.
So I think pace robs us of peace. Is there again?
There again.
This is just for Paul, isn't it?
I'm going to preach this next Sunday.
And the reason I'm intentional about well, I learned this from Rick Warren. Rick Warren has this statement. Get your pen ready, Paul. You'll need your pen for this.
We're recording this as well, so.
All right. Divert daily, withdraw weekly, abandon annually.
I do remember.
And he talked about being a leader or being a person with any kind of busy life. You need a daily divert. And for me, that was when my kids were little. That was I'd come home, play with the kids, wrestle with the kids. My eldest son said, "Yeah, but Dad, that stopped when I was 11," which is about true, because in his mind it's because he could probably win the fight with me then. But you know, But yeah, I realized it was a bit tough. But the diversion daily, some diversion daily, which family or some, you know, some personal time that diverts you from your withdraw weekly. That's just like the principle of Sabbath, just having that time. And I try and do that. I'm intentional, try and finish work sort of midday Friday, and then just have that 24-hour period where I'm not thinking about it, not doing anything, not answering emails, etc. And then abandon annually. That's taking time, you know, to be away with family, holidays, and stuff like that. But and then of course there's a load of other rhythms that we can build in. That I'm just very intentional about those things, because I know without that intention, all kinds of health issues are going to hit me. You know, mental health issues, could be physical health issues, you know, emotional health issues. I just feel we're not built to be on all the time.
No,
we're built with this rhythm, aren't we, of rest, of I mean, even every day we need sleep. So just that, and I'm good at sleeping as well. So
that by the way was exactly what you taught on at the meeting I'm referring to.
Yeah.
Well worth as trying to get hold of that message actually.
Paul, can I go back to something you mentioned a little while ago? I know you kind of talked about it in the midst of a bigger point, but I feel like it'd be remiss not to kind of revisit it. You kind of mentioned that you just had an experience yesterday of someone. Was it in your church or someone that you're aware of that kind of committed suicide?
In the church, yeah.
In the church, yeah. I mean, for a start, I'm so sorry. That sounds horrendous, and our thoughts are with everyone that's involved in that. One of the statistics we mentioned right at the very beginning, and you feel wary mentioning it because it carries weight, and it carries, you know, behind every statistic is lives destroyed and like destruction. So as much as you feel like you're able to or is appropriate to do, could you talk to us a little bit about not necessarily the specifics of the circumstance, but how you're coping with that and how you're supporting the family through that and how you begin to make sense of that?
Yeah, well, I think it's too early to throw out too many sort of quick answers.
Yeah,
and because that journey, we've had other people in the past through the years and other families who faced, you know, who faced that, whether it's been drug related. This wasn't. This was, I would say, a despair issue, and just getting to a stage of life where there was just no point. The person felt there's just no point of living, and so on. But yeah, so I think in community, we're trying to support as much in community. So, you know, in terms of pastorally, just being there for the person, whatever they need, however they need, that kind of support. It's amazing that whilst the person has family outside of the church, who they of course did contact, the next 4, 5, 6 people they contact are all people within the church.
Yeah.
You know, who they feel they can give support to. And so as a family, as a church family, we'll just rally around and be there for people. There's sometimes, you know, you just don't have any words, do you?
Yeah.
But what you do have is presence. And that presence, even if that presence has to be, you know, through phone calls or whatever, there's presence that we can have. And of course, when it's local, like it is in our situation, actually in the town, we can have some physical presence on the ground as well. And there'll be people and there'll be environments where that person can do that. I went, part of my journey, just the power of presence was very acute to me through one particular season where I just wanted to be in a space with people, like I didn't want to say anything, didn't want to talk about anything, but I just didn't want to be in isolation.
Yeah.
Because I knew isolation was killing me and making me worse. And so I would turn up for meetings I didn't even like. But I was happy because I'm there, and somehow that presence of people was helping. And that's why for me as a pastor, I never encourage people to withdraw. Don't put yourself in a place that will wreck you, or is but withdraw. And so we will try in that situation to have presence and connection, because those things can bring healing and can bring strength and bring life. But that's a journey, you can imagine, can't you, from that yesterday to back to some sense of health and strength. There's no quick fix.
Yeah.
Prayer will help,
but
it won't help quickly.
Are there any other top tips in terms of how to, because when you say it like that, you hear it and you go, yes, that's absolutely the powerful thing to do.
Yeah,
it's hard to do, and it's often hard to know how to be present and how to support people going through things like that. Any other top tips as to how to be present, and how to even if it's not saying anything, and things that you can do that just are clear demonstrations? Because I think quite often what happens is, because we feel uncomfortable, we don't know how to support, we ourselves withdraw because we don't want to say the wrong thing, do the wrong thing, but that then leaves the person or the family or the community in isolation. So it'd be great just to hear any top tips you've got for that.
Yeah, I think words of encouragement are really important. What I don't mean by that is, necessarily, and again, forgive my context, because I realize not every listener will be in this context. But what I don't mean by that is mini sermons or trite things, but words of encouragement. So just receiving a text, I'm thinking of you and I'm praying for you, love you. I remember a few years ago, I started saying to all other pastors, I love you, which felt a little bit weird at the time for them, but now we all say it to each other. We'll finish our messages because we're like, I'm trying to create brotherhood. But I just think simple words of encouragement. Do you need me to questions? Do you need me to come see you? You know what I mean? And just when you think of something, do it, but do it sensitively. If you think, should I send a card? Send a card, but send it. Make sure it's sensitive. Don't try and fix it all through your, through 3 paragraphs of writing, but just tell people you're there for them. It means more than we would ever know. We had a guy in COVID who went into a coma. He was in a coma for, I forget the times, but it's a miracle he's alive, and he's alive with full mental strength now. Every day when he was in a coma, I text him. Every day, say, hey, love you, man, praying for you every day. When he comes out of the coma, his phone goes bing, 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 bing. He's got like 40 texts from me. Now imagine what that does for a person. And it came from a genuine place. It wasn't something I'm thinking, we need to text him every day. It's in the manual. It's in the pastor's manual. Text the person in a coma every day. But it actually had incredible impact on his life. So all you can say is, when people are going through something, if you're prompted, if there's something you feel you can do, if you've got the gift of giving and you can give, if there's a gift giving person, do it, but do it sensitively. Just let people know you're there for them, because you being there for them is a sign that God's there for them. So if you withdraw, it can feel like God's withdrawing. all this happens subconsciously, doesn't it? But if we're here for you, we're standing with you. Is there anything? It can give that sense that, hey, this is how God's responding to my crisis.
I think that piece of advice of if you think it, do it is golden, because we've all fallen victim to that. The amount of times I'll think, oh, I should probably send that person a message because they pop into my head. You don't think of doing it, and then you sit down with a conversation with them 3 months later, and they go, I just feel like people have moved on, and from whatever they'd be going through. You're like, well, I know that's not true, but actually I didn't do anything to demonstrate otherwise for you, and I didn't give you anything so that you knew that wasn't true. So I think that's probably the one. That's probably one of the best pieces of advice is just, the minute that idea pops into your head, act on it.
Do it. And probably the more awkward it feels, the more necessary it is.
Yeah.
So, you know, because it can feel awkward when a person's in a crisis, because you think, do they need this? But actually, it's probably the most necessary if it's done well and sensitively. Can bring real encouragement.
Yeah. Amazing. Well, we're almost out of time, but I'd love to give the last few minutes over to you. If there's anything else that you had thought about when you were kind of thinking about coming on here that you haven't had a chance to say yet.
I feel like we've talked about an awful an awful lot, really. I think I would just want to say to anyone who might be struggling, even, or with people, living with people who are struggling, or connected to people who are struggling, there is hope. You know, that there is hope. There's good people. There's good practices and solutions, and don't be afraid to seek help. If that's spiritual help, you know, from a church community, or if it's psychological help, or, you know, professional help from GP, it is not a sign of weakness to seek help. In those things. Reach out. You are more valuable than you think, and so you get in health. A person pursuing health and pursuing fitness in that area of their life is so important. So I think that would be the last thing, just like a message of there's hope, you know, and be intentional, be proactive, and get some rhythms.
Yeah,
love it.
Amazing. Paul, do you want to finish us off?
Yeah, well, that's a great reminder. I love that mental fitness. We can all proactively do something. Paul, just so appreciate your time and your heart and your willingness to just come and share your experience and your wisdom. Anything just as well around ground level that we can be praying for you and church?
Oh, I'd love you to. Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, thank you. And thank you for the opportunity to come on as well. I just, like I say, I'm a big advocate for mercy and the stuff, keys to freedom. Sorry, I was calling it the freedom course at the start, wasn't I? And it's just that I get that wrong every time, and my wife has to correct me. But anyway, yeah, just a big advocate for all you guys are doing, and thank you for that. But thank you for this opportunity as well. And just again, you know, just want to shout out, you know, if people can support Mercy, you know, in any way, please do that. Just ground level, what you guys can pray for. We've got our Awaken event, which is, it used to be Grapevine, then it was one event, now it's Awaken, and we're back. Last time was the first time we'd done it, the full event, Lincolnshire Showground, August Bank Holiday, for first time we'd done it for 4 years, and so we're back this year, and our numbers have increased already. We're well ahead of bookings from where we were last year, and so it's going to be a fantastic event. And if you could pray into that, we're just really believing. We have 3 goals in ground level, and that is creating healthy churches, developing great leaders, and equipping God's people. And the event really leans into equipping God's people. You know, it's that bigger picture of the people of God being equipped for life. And so so if you can pray into that, that would be awesome.
Yeah, we will definitely hold you in prayer, and thank you for all you're doing there as well. It's great to be a part of and to visit. I have a great time when I go over there, so thank you, and I'll most likely see you at the next one. I don't know if we can put it on the group chat or But yeah, if anyone wants to go and check out, we'll be praying for you guys.
Yeah, it's awakenevent.uk, I believe the website. So yeah, it'd be good.
Brilliant. Get your camping gear out.
That's it.
Fantastic. Thanks, Paul. We love you. We love you.
Yeah, we love you, Paul.
I love you.
Love you too, mate. Love you too. See you guys.
Blessings.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.